Welcome to a new Team CGC 9.8 video. So today I got 7 CGC 9.8 comics to invest in on a $700 budget. And we've been doing a lot of these budget style videos lately. So if you haven't already, I would invite you to join the team and subscribe to Team CGC 9.8. Yeah, I'd love to have you on our comic book collecting and comic book investing team. Hit the bell for all the latest notifications. Add me on Instagram and Twitter as well. All the links in the description below. But today, for $700, I think you can just expect to get a great key issue in the 9.8 for that amount of money. And, you know, for most people, the 9.8's on this list. Like, if you had them in your collection, they're pretty much grails to most people. Like, just a fantastic list, I think, to get into of, some CGC 9.8s on a $700 budget. Okay, so first book is pretty much a grail for me. Yeah, absolutely. So first book to recommend here is a Spawn #1 in the newsstand in the CGC 9.8. So Spawn #1, you kind of get the first official appearance of Spawn, and such a memorable classic cover from the 90s, so collectible, super nostalgic for me as well. Just, one you definitely want if you're a Spawn fan. Spawn #1. So I am kind of recommending Spawn #1 in the newsstand. Yeah, so the newsstand, you know, basically your more rare Spawn #1 in the CGC 9.8. It was for every 100 direct versions of Spawn #1, there was one newsstand printed. Yeah, and the only way you can tell the difference is just this little barcode here, just the magic barcode. So for Spawn #1, why I really recommend the newsstand on this one specifically is this one came out in the early 90s. So in the 90s, comic book collecting was just so popular, and specifically in the early 90s was the peak of popularity and comic book printing in general. So there were so many Spawn #1s printed. So it's just if you're coming at it from kind of like me, like a collector investment perspective, the Spawn #1 newsstand makes sense because you're getting the more, the most rare Spawn #1 that you can basically buy. So it makes a lot of sense from that perspective, I think. So definitely recommending this one on a $700 budget. We'll get into some of the pricing history in a second here because interesting where this book is kind of done in the last couple months here. But on the census for Spawn #1, 6,323 in the CGC 9.8. So Spawn's like the most popular 90s hero maybe. So many on the census in the 9.8. So clearly, obviously that's directs and newsstands clumped together. Yeah, unfortunately on the census, they don't differentiate newsstand from direct. So most of those would be direct versions of Spawn #1. So what I like to do in this case, I just like to take about 5% of all those. And that's going to give you a rough estimate of how many newsstand versions of Spawn #1 in the 9.8 that are out there. So 5% of 6,323 is about 316. So maybe there's about 316 Spawn #1s in the newsstand out there. Yeah, it's too bad they didn't separate them on the census, but the 9.8 ratio is 52.2%, so not a super rare one, and nobody really knows what the newsstand one is, so, that doesn't really matter too much. So Spawn #1 in the newsstand. I have saw one, it was like 3 to 4 weeks ago, I think. It sold in an auction for $700 even. Spawn #1 newsstand in the blue label. Now, this is on the back of, I thought I would have to put this on kind of a higher budget list, but this is on the back of, maybe 2 to 3 months ago. McFarlane had said something, he was on somewhat of a media tour, and there was some rumors that, basically he confirmed that Spawn is in pre-production, like a new Spawn movie is in pre-production. So on the back of that, there was an auction that was kind of perfectly timed with that rumor, and it ended up going for $1,090 or something like that. And I was talking to a lot of people on the team like, wow, that's an overpay. That's a perfect example of just kind of getting out there in a promotion-filled environment and buying a hot book in the 9.8, and a lot of times you'll get burned for that. So just a couple months later, one selling for $700, and 2 months before, $1,090, right in the midst of those rumors. So there have been a couple that have sold. I'm kind of pushing the budget on this one. There's been a couple that have sold over $700, but I still think Spawn #1 in the newsstand around 700, under, maybe even 650 if these, there's a bit of a lull and the rumors cool down. I think that's a really good price for this book. And yeah, this is all considering I bought mine about a year ago for $375. So this one's come a long way with those rumors, and I kind of hit myself a bit for maybe not buying one more when they were around that $400 price. So I still think under 700 is completely doable once it lulls in the rumors, but with the rumors. But yeah, Spawn number 1 in the newsstand is just one to want if you're a big Spawn fan like me. Because yeah, I was like, 1995, I would have been 10 years old, just getting right into collecting and looking back on Spawn number 1, which had come out a couple years earlier, and just, wow, and then, getting into all the McFarlane art. So that's really so nostalgic for me, and definitely want to recommend a Spawn number 1 in the newsstand, CGC 9.8. So next one here is a really big DC key issue to consider. It's a New Teen Titans number 2. Yeah, the first appearance of Deathstroke, the Terminator. Yeah, great cover too, George Perez cover, just killing it. This is like George Perez's prime, basically, early 80s. So New Teen Titans number 2 is a huge DC key issue. It's done pretty well in the last little bit. We'll get into the prices here. 667 CGC 9.8s out there. Yeah, that's not too bad at all for such a big villain. And I think, Deathstroke, he hasn't really been in like a movie or anything. He's been in like some animated movies, stuff like that, but on the big screen in a big budget movie, like Deathstroke would be cool, and I think he would be well received by kind of the general public. So this is a cool collector item. Yeah, and DC keys, a lot of times they're not like Marvel keys, where usually for like a really popular villain like this and a Marvel villain, it would be over 1,000 easy in the 9.8, but 667 is not bad for how popular Deathstroke the Terminator is in the blue label. 15.5%, the 9.8 ratio. So decent rarity. This is a 1980 book, so you'd maybe like to see that a bit lower, but it's still decent. So, not too bad there. Coinciding with the big first appearance is great. So, interesting with this one, because maybe pushing the budget with this one too. It seems, yeah, there's a bit of a lull in the prices. Like, it seems like some books, they'll go for under 600, and then if the market decides that they're worth more than that, they immediately jump to like 800. So it's kind of hard to fit some books in this budget. But Go Collect, interestingly, has this one for $625. But on eBay, I saw one sell for $699. Yeah, $699.99 on eBay. Go Collect's got it at $625. So that's kind of fitting the $700 budget. But just in the last month here, this one, there's been a few that have sold for over $700. But I think if you're patient and, certainly I bet on eBay right now, there's some one, like people are asking $900 and stuff like that. Like you're always going to see that. You got to be patient, try to get it close to the fair market value. There's always going to be people out there trying to get more money for a 9.8. Can't just expect to immediately go out and know, the books on eBay are going to match this budget video perfectly. Like, you got to be patient and wait for some motivated sellers to sell. And I think you can get this one still for right around $700, I think is a pretty great deal. Yeah, this one, talking about maybe the last year in prices with this one, I remember it sort of right around 500. Maybe even some had went under 400, like 450 a year, over a year ago. So this one's done pretty well with the 9.8s heating up, and for good reason, I think. Like Deathstroke, a classic villain that does have a lot of potential, and if he doesn't make it in a movie, this is just a book you can really enjoy having with his awesome George Perez cover and big first appearance. So New Teen Titans number 2, CGC 9.8, hopefully a lick under 700, I think is just a great buy in the CGC 9.8. Okay, next one's a cool one, one that really has a big cult following. It's a Sandman number 1. Yeah, this is the first appearance of Morpheus. Sandman was written by Neil Gaiman, and, he's really got a cult of fans, and he's a really popular writer. So Sandman number 1 is one of the big keys to get out of the Sandman run. In the 9.8, 795 CGC 9.8s out there, not too bad. This is a 1989 book, I'm pretty sure. A 28.9%, the CGC 9.8 ratio. So you'd probably like to see that a little bit lower, to be honest, given the price of this book. And I have noticed this one hasn't increased in price as much as some other books that, maybe have a bit lower of a 9.8 ratio and were a bit more undervalued. This one, not very rare in the 9.8, but certainly so many Sandman fans out there willing to really, they want this book and they're willing to pay up for it. Cause yeah, definitely Sandman number 1's the one to get for sure. So, having a look, completed listings on eBay, one for $650 and one for $688. And this was one where, a year ago, I remember $550-ish. So yeah, maybe it's increased in value about $100, which is, not that much, cause the market's done so well with coronavirus, and a lot of 9.8s that are classic key issues have really kind of pretty much doubled in price almost. So, Sandman number 1, maybe not so much with that maybe not as attractive 9.8 ratio could be one of the reasons why, I think. But Sandman #1 is, there is a big cult of fans. I think there was like a show, or there's rumors that there's going to be a show, so maybe that, you know, is going to be good for the future of this book. But if you're a Sandman fan, it's one to consider, and definitely, you know, hopefully even under $650, I think you can swing on this one in the CGC 9.8. Okay, next one is one of those huge DC keys, I think, again. Yeah, it's a DC Comics Presents #26. Yeah, this is the first appearance of the new Teen Titans, in kind of a preview, like it's, yeah, the first Cyborg, and I forget the other two. Yeah, my mind's kind of going blank. I'll have the information written below. But DC Comics Presents is a huge DC key. I've kind of considered this one where there's been a couple auctions that have popped up in Canada kind of tempting me, but it's along, like, with New Teen Titans 2 and DC Comics Presents 26. Both just classic 80s DC keys to consider in the 9.8, and I think they're great, both great investment grade books. Unfortunately, I don't have any of them, but let's look on the census here. 429 CGC 9.8s for DC Comics Presents #26 in the blue label. 14.4% the CGC 9.8 ratio, so that's not too bad at all. That's a really pretty nice investment grade book, getting into the teens, the lower the better. So of all graded copies, 14.4% of them are CGC 9.8s. Okay, so talking about the price, because yeah, I sort of thought this one maybe at times has gone for a lot more. I think maybe there were some rumors or something, I don't know, but occasionally you see these maybe go for more. But I was seeing a completed listing on eBay for $655.99, I think that is. $655, we'll call it. So certainly fitting a $700 budget, although there's been some sales in the blue labels, you know, maybe looking great in a new case, Newsstand, maybe going for like $750, $800. So possibly pushing the budget with this one a little bit, but I think if you're patient, this is still one you can get under $700, and it's a really great key issue to get under $700. And yeah, like, you know, I sort of wish, you know, they made that New Mutants movie. That was a huge bomb. Like, nobody saw it, pretty much. I wish they went with, like, well, I guess it's a Marvel DC, so this doesn't really make sense. But I would really love to see a new Teen Titans live-action movie. And I know there's been some of the show and things like that, but I think big budget movie would be really cool for new Teen Titans. And yeah, I think with DC Comics Presents #26 is just such a great, you know, DC key that probably has some underrated potential. And, you know, even if they didn't come up with the movie, just one of the DC 1980s keys to consider. Absolutely. So well collected, yeah. Okay, next one here is a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 95. The SDCC variant I want to talk about in the CGC 9.8. So this is when Jennika becomes the new Ninja Turtle. Yeah, she becomes kind of with the yellow bandana. So 5th member of the team, I think, was a pretty cool kind of modern book to focus on, and I got this book in sort of a lot of the other cheaper versions. But in this SDCC variant, I think this is one to consider. Certainly if you're a Turtles and Jennika fan and you're into these kind of books. Because there was only, I'm pretty sure it was 250 copies printed, and it was like 50 were like only to IDW staff or something like that, and then 200 were to the public. So apparently there's only 200 of these out there. So, you know, getting that, you know, Jennika becomes the new Ninja Turtle in this book with the really rare cover. This is one that I've been really kind of looking at to try to buy, but you don't see too many of them in the 9.8, and yeah, certainly a lot of times people are trying to get way more money than, you know, what I think is a decent price. So yes, I do think it's fitting a $700 budget. So look on the census really quick. There's a 68 CGC 9.8s in the blue label. Interesting, there's a little bit more. I think it was 74 9.8s in the signature series. So that brings the number of graded ones. It's a little over 150 of total graded copies. So if there's only 200 out there, you know, 150 of them are graded. That's, you know, a lot of them are already graded. So a 1 of 68. That's kind of cool for the really rare variant of, you know, when Jennika becomes the new Ninja Turtle. I think this one has, I've said it before on videos, a little bit of like underrated long-term potential. Because these rarer variants, they just, you know, it's just like if the character gets hot, there are people out there really willing to pay up for like the really rare variant of like a hot character or something like that. And I think Jennika does have a pretty bright future. So 91.9% the CGC 9.8 ratio. So this is a new book just coming out in the last couple of years. It went right to CGC, so not rare in the 9.8, unfortunately. So I did see one of these in the blue label sell for 700 OBO, or best offer. So yeah, that's definitely going to put it on the $700 budget. I think I did saw one sell for over 700 though, and then there's some signature series ones that are selling for over 700. But yeah, I mean, there's only 68 out there, so it's going to be pretty tough to grab this one at a good value. But I do think under 700 is the fair value, you know, whether hopefully closer to 600, but if you really wanted it, closer to 700. But I do think this one's just got some underrated potential, given, you know, where these variants have gone in some really popular characters. And I do, I think Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, really iconic superhero team, like just as popular as like a Miles Morales or a Dr. Aphra, and those kind of variants have just absolutely taken off in the 9.8. So yeah, I got a bit of a feeling about this one, and it's trending up there. Yeah, it's trending nicely. Like on a $700 budget video, I think like 6 to 12 months ago, this was on a $400 budget video. Yeah, they were selling for like $350 to $400 for quite a while after, you know, maybe a year after this book had come out. So I think it's trending in the right direction, and yeah, just wanted to consider if you're a big Jennika fan or Ninja Turtles fans and some of these modern Ninja Turtle comics. Yeah, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 95 SDCC variant in the 9.8. Okay, next one's a really cool one that I was surprised by kind of the affordability of this one. It's a cool one. It's a Shazam #1. Yeah, so you get a bunch of first appearances in this one. It's like, yeah, first appearance of Captain Marvel or something like that. I'll get all the details below here, but yeah, Shazam #1 in the 9.8. Certainly that movie had come out, right? And it was a pretty big hit. And this is a really good example right now, kind of a cold, really good investment grade book that's pulling back in price. Because I do remember some of the prices around that Shazam movie, and I hadn't saw the movie or anything, but I did hear a lot of good things about it, so it kind of deserved maybe a bit of a price increase. But now, a year after the movie or whatever it is, prices are lulling, I think. So we'll talk about that in a sec here. But on the census, this is into the 70s, well into the 70s. That's another great thing about this one. Yeah, I just love having like a 70s perfect 9.8 book. There's a kind of a special feeling with a 70s book, I think, from my experience buying CGC 9.8s. Just such an old book in perfect shape. 285 CGC 9.8s, 285 in the blue label. Not too bad. This is, yeah, getting into the 70s, so it's, yeah, a lot of times this old of a book, you just don't see that many 9.8s, but kind of cool that you could still, you know, technically get it, because there are quite a bit of 9.8s. 285 for a 70s book. 7.9% the CGC 9.8 ratio. So of all graded copies, only 7.9% of them are CGC 9.8s. And that's in the context of like this being a 70s book. Like if that was in the 80s, this book would be so expensive. Like that is super rare for an 80s book. But getting in the 70s, it's maybe not as rare for a 9.8. But yeah, interesting with this one, because Shazam #1, I saw in an auction on eBay. One ended at 710. Yeah, I do remember a lot of auctions going more than that. So I checked Go Collect, and they have the fair value at $550. So I am not, you know, maybe this one even lulled even more like a month or two ago. I don't follow this one too much. But I actually thought around that 710, you know, a little bit over the budget, admittedly. But I think given that Go Collect fair value, I think this is one you can get under 700 right now. And I'm pretty sure I remember some completed listings right around the 900 to 1,000 level, like mid the Shazam movie, like people were liking it. This was going for about $1,000 in the 9.8. So if you really like Shazam and you can get this under $700, I think it's a great one. Yeah, great cover too. Yeah, this is just like for the price, and again, that a bit of a special feeling with the old 1970s books in the 9.8. So this might be one to go after if you're a big Shazam fan. Okay, last one on the list. We'll end with a super classic that yeah, I got two of here. And maybe pushing the budget on this one, but I'll talk a little bit about prices and a bit of a strategy to buy, maybe. Amazing Spider-Man 316. Yeah, this is the classic Todd McFarlane cover. It's one of those books that's like not a key issue, but has trended up so nicely in price. And, you know, I love these sort of not a key issue books because it, you know, it's sort of, you know, I think some collectors tend to not go after them, and then it keeps them maybe a little bit cheaper, but then they end up being maybe a little bit more rare in the 9.8 and things like that, and end up doing well just because certainly McFarlane has his cult of fans too. Like, this is pretty much the first Venom cover. His little face is on the issue before this, but it's basically the first cool Venom cover by Todd McFarlane in his prime, and a book that, you know, I mentioned there, like in 1995, I was about 10 years old, just getting into Spawn and all that, looking back on these type of books and just being like, wow, I want one of those. And yes, I guess so lucky now to have two of them in the 9.8. But Amazing Spider-Man 316, so collectible, one I absolutely recommend. But you know, so much Venom hype with the Venom 2 movie. So we'll talk about price in a sec. $991 CGC 9.8s in the blue label. So yeah, one of 991s, not too bad for kind of a late 80s book. I was surprised, actually. I thought there'd be just way more of these. I thought this would be like one of the most popular 80s books on the census. 26.9% the CGC 9.8 ratio. You'd like to see that a bit lower. This is a late 80s book, so you know, it's not too bad, but you would like to see that maybe under 20%, and then this book would probably be like a little, you know, maybe $200 or $300 more. But not too rare in the 9.8. So Amazing Spider-Man 316 is interesting. There's certainly been some auctions that have went over 700 in the last like 4 to 6 months here, let's call it, with there was the Let There Be Carnage announcement, and things really heated up off of that, and Amazing Spider-Man 300 really heated up with like Null, the God of the Symbiotes, was really popular for a bit, and then everything symbiote just heated up. Plus the Venom 2 movies definitely coming out next year, hopefully at some point. Who knows what will happen, but so, you know, I still think this can fit on a $700 budget. There is one on eBay. It was about a month ago in an auction that sold for $670. So that's my feeling, where, you know, a lot of this hype is generated and some of the promos generated, and then you get kind of noobs coming to the market. And then this one is definitely prone to, yeah, someone's going to come in and grab one for $800 or $850 or something like that because they just want it right now. They have no idea about the prior price history or anything. But I think if you wait for a lull in this one, or maybe you get a little lucky in a lull before the movie, before the Venom 2 movie comes out next year, because once that movie and trailer drop, it's going to really heat up again, and that's when you're probably not going to want to buy. But you might be able to find a lull for kind of this $670 range, and yeah, if you want this book now, I think that's a decent price. If you want to be really strategic about these Venom books, like this one, maybe Amazing Spider-Man 300 lumped in there as well. Amazing Spider-Man 299 even, and 298 to be honest. So all these Venom books, you can, if you really want to, yeah, try to be strategic and get the best deal, I think you wait 6 to 12 months after Venom 2's out of theater. Then, like, everyone's going to be thinking about the newest movie that's coming out, whatever that is, and Venom will be a little bit old news, and you'll be able to get this one, I think, under 700 for sure. Because, yeah, I mean, the greatest 80s cover almost for me. Pretty much one of the best 80s cover for me. But with the 26.9% 9.8 ratio, you know, with this book getting really up there in price, it's getting into that territory of, like, books that have like low teens 9.8 ratios that are way, or 9.8 percentages that are way more rare in the CGC 9.8. So, you know, it's so cool, so great. It does deserve the price rise, but it's not as rare as most 9.8s that are about this price in era. So, yeah, I really, for this one, although it's super tempting to want to just get it now and pay over 800 or something like that, I think you can get it under 700 in some lulls, hopefully. Or maybe even closer to 600 after the Venom 2 movie, I think is a decent strategy. On Amazing Spider-Man 316, which is just one of the best 80s comic books in the 9.8 to collect, in my opinion. Okay, so that is the full list of 7. Okay, I will have a list in the description below if you want to have a quick look. But yeah, we'll conclude up here. And yeah, I truly think like all the 9.8s on this list are just like fantastic key issues in their own right. So you almost can't go wrong on this list. And for $700 certainly. And it was pretty tough to, yeah, I had a lot of comics I sort of thought were on this list, but they're kind of $800 and $900 budgets now. Yeah, so just the market has really kind of is trending up, I think. And yeah, it's almost pretty tough for me because I'm used to maybe some of the prices from like a year ago, mostly when I was doing a lot of my buying my big key issues. So it's pretty an amazing education for me even doing these videos and realizing that, you know, some books are just much higher budgets now, and unfortunately in a way, but that's how it is. So yeah, but great to just do these budget videos too, because I wanted to do budgets, and then I also got era videos. So if you want to search by 1990s, 1980s, or modern, I got those videos. Even I got a 1970s video. So you can do that, or you can search by budget, and we've already done 200, 300, 400, 500, 600, and now 700. So yeah, that's the kind of idea about these videos, and we'll be going 800, 900, 1,000, and I got to figure out what I'm going to do after 1,000. But okay, thanks so much for watching today. Yeah, I really appreciate all the support and great conversations on Instagram as well. Message me on Instagram if you did have any questions about whatever it might be. But thanks so much for watching today. So appreciate it, team. And I will see you on the next one.